Von Loraldi, and I think we still have a few people that are going to be hopping on, but that's okay. We want to make the most of our time that we have with our presenter. Again, my name is Yvonne Loraldi. I am a social worker for special education in Northside, and tonight we also have Miss Lisa Santoyo and Jeanette Dreffel, who are our district transition specialist, and we have Mr. Brad Beach, who is remind me again, Brad, an elementary,
Support specialist.
yes, for Northside. And presenting tonight is Miss Allison Packard with Packard Law Firm. Allison has shared an enormous amount of information with our parents. She's been presenting for years to Northside families, and she also has a unique perspective in that she may share some of your experiences because she has a daughter that has special needs as well. So we're happy to have her joining us tonight to present on Social Security and Special Needs Trusts, and it's a lot of information. So she's going to try to pack in as much as possible, but we ask that you please put your questions in the chat and we will take those questions at the end so that Allison can provide you as much information as possible. So now, with no further ado, we'll have Miss Allison go ahead and start her presentation.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the invitation. I'm going to try to share my screen, and if someone could just confirm that you can see the, okay, great. Well, thank you again for having me. I do care a lot about this information. As Yvonne mentioned, I have a daughter with disabilities, and so this is the life that I live. And, I am an attorney who practices in this area, but by far my best experience comes from being mom. So I'm happy to do this together. So tonight we're going to focus, as we mentioned, mostly on Social Security benefits, a little bit of special needs trust, a little tiny bit of ABLE accounts. There is so much information here that we just can't get through everything in an hour. So I'm going to just be able to touch the surface on some of these issues. If you have questions, you are welcome to contact me, and I can answer questions that we don't get answered tonight. But let me just jump right in. Social Security benefits are really confusing. If you feel like you just don't understand it, you're not alone. They're very confusing for a lot of people. To start with, all of the programs sound very similar, but they're not the same. So we've got SSI versus SSDI. So let's hit that from the beginning. Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI, that is the program that offers disability benefits for people with insurance. So you get your insurance by paying FICA taxes. Every month that I'm paying FICA taxes, I'm getting my credits. And if I have enough credits, I have insurance in case I become disabled. And we'll see that my insurance covers other people. That is different from SSI, which is a program for people who don't have the credits under Social Security insurance. It's a needs-based program for people who have very little income, little resources, but they have disabilities. And the government has said that we need to have a program for everyone to have some kind of basic payment. So that's the overall difference between the two. Let's get into it a little bit more. But first of all, applying for these benefits. How do you apply? You can apply in a lot of different ways. You can go down to the Social Security office and wait for hours until they call your name, but you can also apply online. You can call by calling the phone number on the screen, and I don't think it's that difficult of an application, but if you go to the website, you can get an idea of what you're going to need to apply online. You can use an attorney to apply. A lot of people ask me, do I need a lawyer? Do I not need a lawyer? And hopefully by the end of the presentation, you'll have a better idea if you should get a lawyer or not. My general recommendation is if you feel like when we go through this, that you or your child, I'm going to assume I'm talking mostly to parents tonight, it's going to be a clear approval. It's obvious need for this program and you're going to get approved, then you may not need a lawyer to help you. If you feel like it's a close case, maybe you have an attorney help you. If you do have a lawyer help you, all lawyers are paid the same, and the lawyers get 25% of the back pay if the case is won. So what that means is if I file an application in January of 2025, but it doesn't get approved until, and I hate to say this, but this is realistic, June of 2026, then there's all those months of back pay since the application was filed. Well, if you have a lawyer helping you, Social Security sends the attorney 25% of that back pay amount. There is a cap in case you're one of those cases that takes years and years. But if you want to save that back pay and it's something that you can handle on your own, in a lot of cases, it's very easy to do and you don't need a lawyer. Okay. All right, so Social Security Disability Insurance, known as SSDI, this is also called DIB or SSD. When people talk about, hey, I'm on disability or I have disability, this is generally what we're talking about. This is the most common type of payment for people who have paid into the system and have become disabled, and they can't wait until their retirement age to draw what they're entitled to get. And so the amount of money that someone is paid under this program varies. It depends on how many years you've worked, how much you've paid into the system. But once you're eligible for this program and you have a waiting period of a couple of years, it's a couple of years and another 5 months or so, you end up getting Medicare. So this is a way that some people get into Medicare earlier than age 65. But to get on this program, you have to be insured. And that means you have the total number of work credits that are required, and they're recent enough. So let me just show you what the work credits look like. You earn a work credit when you're earning money and you're paying your FICA taxes, which is just happening automatically. And every time you've earned $1,810, this is the 2025 number. It used to be less. Every year it goes up a bit. But in 2025, anytime you earn $1,810, that's one credit. And you can get up to 4 credits a year. So the amount of credits you need to get this disability insurance payment depends on your age. So if we're looking at somebody who's just 22, 23 years old, they actually only need 6 credits, which is about a year and a half worth of work. So if they've earned just enough to get a credit, they can get on disability insurance at a young age. Someone who's much older, my age, I need about 9 years worth of work. And so the most that anybody needs is 40 credits. So that's, the equivalent of 10 years of work, but it also needs to be recent. So for example, if I had worked a long, long time and then I quit working for 10 years and then I were to apply, that could be a problem. It needs to be recent, okay? If I were to die, there are also survivor benefits that pass on to my children, and that can go to a spouse. Those credits needed depend on the decedent's age at death. And we're not going to have time to get really into that. If you have questions on that, follow up with me and we can dig into it a little bit. If you do not have enough work credits, then you apply for Social Security disability, you're going to get a letter in the mail that says you don't qualify for disability benefits because you haven't worked long enough. This is really upsetting to a lot of people who file these applications because they don't understand that the first application that gets processed is your Social Security disability. So someone like my daughter, her name's Angela, and she's happy if I tell you about her. I've covered that with her. So, my daughter Angela, she hasn't worked long enough. So she would not get approved. But it means she's not getting approved for the program under work credits. It doesn't mean she's not approved for SSI. That's going to come in a separate letter. So don't panic when you get the first letter. That's a technical denial, meaning you don't have enough work credits. If you're not sure how many work credits you have, you can go to ssa.gov and you can create your own account if you don't already have one created, or look at your account and you can see exactly where you are, how many credits you have. And it also will tell you about other people that are insured under your work record. So for example, when I'm paying into the system, I am also insuring my spouse if he needs my insurance, any minor children if I had them, and also this one is really critical to me, any disabled adult child. So as I mentioned, my daughter, who's 30, she has disability. So my insurance coverage also covers her. That is a program called Childhood Disability Benefits, or CDB. Used to be known as Disabled Adult Child, so you might hear it as DAC. It's confusing, all these initials and letters, but anyway, CDB, to qualify for this program, you have to be over the age of 18 and not married, and you had a disability before the age of 22, and your disability was continuous since that age, and now you have a parent who has died or retired, meaning drawing Social Security retirement, or has become disabled, meaning drawing Social Security disability. So in effect, what that means is that when I draw my retirement, hopefully I'll make it to retirement age, I won't need disability, but when I draw either retirement or disability, I will get my full amount of payments. And my daughter, because she is a disabled adult child under this program, will get 50% of what I'm drawing. It's not going to lower my benefit. She will take 50% of my amount. When I die, her benefit goes up to 75% of my amount. Now, it's only attached to one parent. So my husband has a higher work record. So when he retires, if my daughter's on my work record, she'll switch automatically to his because his work record is higher. So this is really important. So I might spend just a minute. I want to make sure everyone understands this, because in my mind, this is a very, very important benefit for my family. So again, my daughter, if she does not marry, she's going to be able to draw off of my work record or my husband's work record, whichever is greater. And that will move her from SSI, which is the program she gets now, onto the SSDI umbrella under this childhood disability benefit program. Now, because I think this is so important, I think it's critical that if you have the opportunity to get into the Social Security system before the age of 22, it's a great idea if you can. The reason is because Social Security is going to have to determine that this child of yours is not only disabled, but that the disability began before the age of 22. And if you do not, and when we say disability, we mean by Social Security criteria. So it's not just a diagnosis. So for example, if you have a child with autism, the autism diagnosis itself does not tell anyone that that person would qualify for disability benefits. So if possible, you want to get Social Security to make a finding and determination that this person, your child, is disabled. And if you can do it before 22, that is the safest way to get into this childhood disability program at a later age. It says on my screen, you have to have a disability before age 22, and the disability must be continuous. So it doesn't make sense for a lot of people, like, well, of course it's continuous. My child didn't change, especially with a developmental disability. But what we're talking about here is that this child has been continually eligible for disability benefits. So again, I'll use my daughter as an example. She qualified at age 19, but she's now 30. If she decided to go back to work and she was successful and she was working for a few years, I would be thrilled, for one thing, but she would lose her benefits, and depending on if she was in a work incentive program. But let's just say she lost her benefits, she was doing great, but then something happened later and she needed to go back on benefits. Because she had those years where she wasn't eligible, then Social Security will say she was not continuously disabled. So I hope that makes sense. And if there's a question on this specific program, go ahead and interrupt me, but otherwise I'm going to keep going, okay? So when you apply for disability benefits, you have to be both technically eligible and medically. Technically, for the Social Security Disability Program, we said is the amount of work credits or qualifying under a parent's work record if it's a child. And by the way, spouses can sometimes qualify, but we're going to just keep moving on. Okay, you also have to be medically disabled. All right. The definition of medical disability changes if we're discussing a child versus an adult. So for a child, medical disability is real close to what you see in the special education school system. You're disabled as a child if you have a medically determinable physical or mental impairment that results in marked and severe functional limitations. And this impairment has lasted or is expected to last at least a year or result in death. So there you go. That's the legal definition. And what that means is Social Security is going to gather a bunch of information from schools, from parents, from the teachers, and look at 6 different domains. And I have them on the screen. Basically, what they're going to do is look to see, are there marked limitation in 2 of these areas or severe limitation in 1 of these areas? So acquiring and using information, attending and completing tasks. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can see them on your screen. These are the areas that Social Security is going to really delve into to see how significant the limitations are. And if they're very significant, then that means the child qualifies as being medically disabled. Now, once someone is 18, and this is regardless of whether or not they're still in school, so this is not based on school attendance, this is based on age. Once someone's 18, the criteria for disability continues. Disability for an adult means that this person is unable to engage in any substantial gainful activity by reason of a medically determinable physical or mental impairment that is going to last, okay? So the key words here are substantial gainful activity. That has to do with work, okay? Are they capable of doing an activity that is gainful, meaning they can earn some money, and is it a substantial amount? And every year, we call this SGA. Every year, Social Security gives us an SGA amount to go by. So in 2025, SGA is $1,620 a month. What that means is if somebody is earning more than $1,620 in the month, they're not disabled, period. And it doesn't matter if I hired my daughter and I just wanted to pay her a couple thousand a month, even though she's not really doing much. If she's earning more than $1,620, she's over the SGA limit. Now, sometimes there's ways we can get around that. There are some work incentive programs. If the person working needs a lot of modifications to be able to work, there are ways to slightly adjust this. But for purposes of tonight, just think in terms of if you're earning over 1620, you're probably not going to be found to be disabled. It is higher for individuals who are blind, 2,700 for them. Okay.
Allison, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
We had it in the chat, and I didn't want to get too far in your presentation, but does this include children who are adopted from foster care? And this was kind of going back about 2 slides before, in regards to, I think it's when you had the picture of your daughter up when she was like a little one. Do these benefits apply to a child that's adopted through foster care?
Yeah, so if you're talking about the Social Security, sorry, the Childhood Disability Benefit Program, so that if someone is adopted, they're going to have the same legal rights as a child. If they are not adopted, but they're, in foster care but not adopted, then I don't believe that you're going to be eligible for those same programs. So if that didn't answer the question or we need to dig into it, contact me after and I'll look at the regulations with you. But adoption is clearly going to be fine. If it's a legal adoption, it's just like a child. Okay. I'm going to keep going. And if I didn't answer it, reach out to me after and I'll make sure to answer that. Okay. So when we look at this medical evaluation, Social Security is going to do a 5-step test. The first thing that they're going to look at is the person who applied for disability benefits working. And again, they're looking to see, are they earning more than that SGA level? So if they look at the application and they see that this person has a job and they're earning a couple $1,000s a month, not disabled, it's done. We don't even go on to the next step, okay? If they're not working and earning that level, and by the way, I want to be really clear. I believe it's really great for our kids with disabilities to get out and work. And so I don't want anyone to think, oh, the safest thing is just don't work. You just need to know this is the limit that causes some issues. But for sure, a lot of our kids can work part-time jobs and they can, get into the system and then maybe even work more under a work incentive program. So I just don't want to be misunderstood on that. But it is something Social Security looks at. What is the earning that's happening here? So if the person is not working, we go on to number 2. Is the medical condition severe? So in most cases, this is going to be easy to establish that it is a severe lasting condition. Number 3, this is really the key for a lot of people applying for Social Security. Does this condition meet or medically equal a listing? What we mean by the listing, oh, this is a slide before I get into the listing. There are certain conditions that are considered so severe that you automatically qualify for disability benefits. So I forgot about that. I had this slide on that question about how severe it is. If it's severe enough, there's about 287 conditions that will enable you someone to qualify very quickly. And that's going to be something like Lou Gehrig's disease, very low birth weight, under 2 pounds, 10 ounces. There's some of the Down syndrome qualifications that sometimes can qualify here, but it's usually something that's a real severe condition medically. I've got a list, but I'm not going to take the time to go into that. But I was just looking at trisomy 9, Angelman syndrome, Dravet, Kleefstra syndrome. Anyway, I'm not going to go through that, but there's quite a few that are in there. But if you don't qualify for the compassionate allowance, then you look at the standard Blue Book medical listing. So you can Google SSA Blue Book. The formal title is Disability Evaluation under Social Security. And you go into Part A or Part B, depending on if we're looking at an adult or a child, and you can see exactly what Social Security is going to be looking at to see if this person qualifies as being disabled. So here on the screen, we have autism. So if my child has autism and I'm filing an application, then so I know Social Security Disability Determination Services, they're going to be looking through my daughter's medical records to see if she has deficits in verbal communication, nonverbal communication, social interaction. You know, how extreme are her limitations in interacting with other people, understanding, concentrating? Does she have repetitive patterns of behavior? So by looking at the Blue Book, you can see exactly what the Social Security program is looking for to determine disability. Now, I will say Social Security really loves medical records. They will take school records, but they really love medical records. So one problem that I have seen is a lot of parents like me, you know, we're tired, our kids are generally healthy, so we're not going to the doctor very much. And so it was helpful if you're seeing a doctor and explaining the deficits that are happening in your child's life. You want to get it into the medical records. Medical records are just really powerful. So again, I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't be honest, but if your child is really struggling with these areas, tell the doctor so it's part of the medical records, okay? IDD, again, if you have IQ testing, Blue Book calls it intellectual disorder, and you can read in the Blue Book to see exactly what they're looking for. You know, if there's an IQ score below 70 and limitations in these areas that are on the screen, you're going to qualify for disability under that step 3, you know, the Blue Book listing. Okay, so this is something to just be aware of, and you can Google the particular disorder that you're looking at and find out exactly what you need to get your case approved more quickly. If you don't meet the listing, so maybe there is a disability, but as you're looking through the qualifications under that Blue Book, you're just not quite there. So then you just means you have to go to step 4. When you get to step 4, now we're really focused on working. So can this person do work? And well, the first thing they look at is, can this person do a job they used to have? So if I file for disability, they're going to look and see, what was my career? Can I still do that? Can I do something I used to do, variation of that? And then for people who are under 50, especially, they're really looking at, is there any job out there? So, you know, for a lot of our kids, they haven't been able to work or not anything significant. And so there isn't a lot of past work history, but Social Security is going to look to see, is there some job out there that they could do? And if you get to step 4 and 5, you're usually looking at covering this in a hearing. So if you can get approved under step 3, you probably won't need to go into a hearing. But if you can't get approved on step 3, the case will likely be denied. And then you appeal it, and then you go to the hearing, and then we're really looking at working ability. And this is important to understand, because if you go to that hearing and you have a 19-year-old son who has never tried to work, it's not going to help you at the hearing. Okay, so I recommend get involved with Texas Workforce Commission or Workforce Solutions or whatever the right name is. Go to the MAC. They have a work incentive program. Do things. Well, Reddick Center is ideal for this. Get some work experience and try to work and have that so you can show, if needs be at the hearing, that this person tried to work. Here was the experience. Here's where the struggles were. And hopefully your child will succeed at work. I will say, if your child is able to work and excel at this, it is much better than getting on disability. Okay, you should celebrate. That's a great thing. But if it turns out that your child is not able to keep a job without a whole lot of supports and services, and maybe it's just not working, then just understand that it's possible to get on the disability program. Okay. If you need to appeal the case, so this is someone who didn't qualify under that step 3 listing, and now you got to go to a hearing, you should just know it is going to take a long time. The truth is, just to get the initial evaluation right now is taking 10 months, 11 months, up to a year, just for your very first determination letter. And I hope that gets better. I don't know why it's so slow right now, but it's terrible. If you get that letter and you get a denial, don't give up. You can appeal. You get one level of appeal where you say, hey, will you look at it one more time? And to be honest with you, usually they look at it and they say, yep, we still agree you're not disabled. But the big difference comes when you ask for a hearing, and that's when you get in front of an administrative law judge. If you need to appeal your case, I would ask for a lawyer. I would get a lawyer to help you. It's very, very, very hard to win these if you don't have a lot of experience with the system. So we talked earlier about, do I need a lawyer? Do I not? If you get denied, I would use an attorney. If you feel like you can get your case approved by that Blue Book listing, you probably don't need an attorney. But if you're denied, I'd use a lawyer. Okay. This is just a slide to show how long it's taking. This last report came out in November of 2024. This was after you filed your second appeal. So you've already had to wait for the first determination, maybe a year, a couple or 3-4 months to get the next level. And then it was 250 days to get in front of a judge. Right now you can have hearings by Zoom and telephone, and they go a little faster than in person, but this is a long process. So just be prepared for it, okay? Now, what happens if someone is uninsured? So we talked earlier about the credits. Let's say that someone like my daughter, she didn't have enough work credits, or maybe somebody who's been a teacher and they, paid into teacher retirement services rather than Social Security, although now that's changed, hasn't it? But anyway, whatever reason, if you don't have enough work credits, then that is where, and the childhood disability program, meaning you don't have a parent who's retired or disabled and you can't draw into your parents' work record yet, then that's when you're looking at SSI. Okay, so again, everybody gets processed through Social Security disability first. If you don't qualify, then we look at SSI. SSI, this is the needs-based program for people who are poor and needy, is how Social Security says it. So this program, the government says there is a certain amount across the country that someone who is disabled is entitled to get as a monthly payment. In 2025, that number is $967 a month. So remember, with the SSDI, that payment varies for different people. This is a set number. Now, some areas of the country, they have a supplement. I used to live in California and Massachusetts. They both have supplements. Texas does not. So we're looking at 967, and that's all our kids need to live on. So, I didn't choose the numbers, but they're not a ton of money, but it is very helpful. If you're a couple and you're both disabled, it's $1,450. But here's something that's really important. Along with that $967 a month as the maximum payment, you also become eligible in Texas for Medicaid. And that is automatic if you're getting SSI payments. So that is a really great benefit to a family like mine. So how do you get eligible for SSI? As we mentioned, this is a needs-based program. So you have to have limited income and limited assets. That is your technical qualification. So instead of the work credits, now we're looking at income and assets. So, and by the way, the medical qualification is exactly the same. So everything we talked about before with the blue book and all that, that's just the same whether it's SSI or SSDI. But now instead of work credits, we're looking at limited income, limited assets. Social Security calls assets resources. A resource is anything that can be converted to cash. And this is important to understand because this means not only what is in the bank account, but what could you convert to cash. So where I see problems, sometimes there's a whole life insurance policy that could be converted to cash. That's an asset. That's a resource for Social Security. So think about what you have out there for your child. Do they have something that can be converted to cash? They are limited to $2,000 in total assets. All right. So no matter how severe the disability is, if there's more than $2,000 in assets, SSI is going to be denied. So for example, you might have one spouse who is extremely disabled, but their husband or their wife has a good job, good assets. That spouse is not going to qualify for benefits. A parent's resources also count for any children under the age of 18. So what that means is for a lot of our kids, they won't qualify while they're young, but once they're 18, they can qualify because that's when mom and dad's income and assets stop counting for them. Okay. There are things that don't count as an asset. We mentioned the first 2,000. You can actually have a house in your name, a car. You can have, computers and bedroom furniture, things like that. And then the big ones that I like to emphasize are special needs trust and an ABLE account. An ABLE account, there's a limit on how much can be in there. Special needs trust, no limit at all. And we could talk about special needs trust and ABLE accounts for another hour. So I'm going to have to give you a really super quick overview of this. But special needs trust and ABLE accounts, those are the non-countable tools, the places where you can have money that will not be countable for purposes of SSI and Medicaid. A trust account is, something that it's set up where, trying to think the easiest. It's a legal arrangement where somebody is a trustee managing assets for the benefit of a beneficiary. And in that trust, you could have a house, you could deed a house to the trust, you could have cash, so you could go open up a bank account. So it could be different types of assets. An ABLE account is an online account that is managed by a state has a program. In Texas, it's managed by the Texas Comptroller. It's an online account. You don't go into a bank and say, I want an ABLE account. You get an online account if you're doing a Texas one, and it is a tax advantage savings account, kind of like a 529 plan, a college savings plan. It's actually a 529A. And what that means is there's money in there that grows tax-free, but it is only available to people who are disabled before the age of 26. Special needs trust, you can be disabled at a later age. ABLE account, you have to have been disabled before the age of 26. That number is going to change in 2026. It's going to go up to 46. But that's where we are now. There are limits on what can go into an ABLE account. Only $19,000 per year can go into an ABLE account. Any amount of money can go into a special needs trust. Something to remember about an ABLE account is there is a Medicaid payback in Texas. What that means is if you donate $19,000 a year and you grow this ABLE account and then the beneficiary dies, Medicaid gets reimbursed from the remaining funds. So ABLE accounts are great for a lot of reasons, but you've got to remember about that Medicaid payback. Contrast that with a special needs trust. And again, I'm sorry to whip through this so quickly. Two kinds of special needs trusts: a first-party special needs trust and a third-party special needs trust. A first-party special needs trust, this is for someone who's disabled under the age of 65. Only certain people can set this up. And it also has a Medicaid payback on it. So if my daughter has a first-party special needs trust that has $50,000, when she dies, Medicaid says, hey, this is how much we spent on Angela over her lifetime, and you have to use the trust funds to reimburse Medicaid. Now, if she, if there was $100,000 spent on her and there's only $50,000 in the trust, then they're only going to get $50,000. And likewise, if they were only asked for 10,000, she had 50, they only get reimbursed what they paid. But you should know that for most of our kids who are enrolled in managed care programs with SSI or Medicaid waiver programs, huge reimbursements. If you have a child who's getting MDCP benefits, I did one the other day, $2.6 million reimbursement for someone who's only 19, died at age 19. So huge reimbursement. So nobody loves these first party special needs trusts, but these first party special needs trusts are the only kind of trust you can use if the person on government benefits receives money in their name or receive some kind of property and they want to keep their benefits, so they have to move their assets somewhere else. This is the only kind of trust that's available. That is different from a third-party special needs trust. This is your typical estate planning, like I know I'm going to die one day, I'm going to leave my assets to my husband, but if he's not alive, I want it to go to my daughter's trust. Because I'm planning ahead, the money is never going to go to her in her name. And because of that, it can go into a third-party special needs trust. And that kind of trust does not have a Medicaid payback. So in my daughter's case, when she dies, if there's money left in her trust, it's going to go to her brothers and her sister. If they've died before her, to their kids. So a third-party trust is the ideal type of special needs trust, but you have to plan ahead for it. But both kinds of trusts will not count as assets for Social Security purposes. Okay, again, I'm sorry to go through this so quickly. There's more slides. Again, limits on ABLE accounts, on how much can go in every year. There's also a total amount limit of $100,000 for people who are on SSI. But I don't know why you'd want $100,000 in there because of that Medicaid payback. It doesn't make sense to me. If you've got $100,000 to go in there, try to get it to a third-party trust instead, so you don't have the Medicaid payback. Okay, let me add one more thing. I mentioned the $19,000 limit. If someone who has an ABLE account is working, they can actually add another $15,060 of their own money, which is great because it grows tax-free and it's a way to save money. And I'm sorry to whip through this, but I got to keep going because we got a lot to still cover. Okay. This was just a slide just to remind us, if someone's on SSI and they get an inheritance, you have to report any money received. So if grandma leaves money to my daughter, forgot that she's not supposed to get money, she should have given it to the trust, but because she left it to my daughter, then now I have to report it to Social Security and say, hey, Angela got this money, and because I don't want her to lose her benefits, then I transfer it to a first party trust, or if it's under 19,000, I give it to an ABLE account. Or if it was under a will, I can even go back and modify the will to go to a third-party trust. So there's things you can do, but the main point of this slide is you have to report it. Don't think that you can just pretend it didn't happen. This relates to a car wreck settlement, an inheritance, and a gift. You've got to report what you get when you're on SSI. Okay? Besides the asset limit for Social Security, there is also an income limit, and this gets a little complicated, but there's 4 kinds of income that Social Security looks at: earned income, unearned income, in-kind support maintenance, and deemed income. Okay, deemed income, we kind of touched on that before. I just didn't call it deemed income. This is when you have a spouse's income counting for another spouse, or mom and dad's income counts for their child under age 18, if the parent's in the home, okay? So parents' income counts for minor children. That's deemed income. This is a chart. If you think that you might qualify for SSI for a minor child, then the way Social Security looks at financial eligibility really is complicated. It has to do with how many people are in the house. Is the income all earned income? Is it coming in another way? So if you have a situation where you have limited income, then if you want to contact me, this is the latest chart. I checked today to see if they've updated it, and we're still on the 2024 chart. I haven't seen a new one come out, but we could look at that and make sense of it. You have to have limited income, limited assets to qualify. And again, if you're a minor, your parents' income is going to count as well. Child support for I'm just going to keep going just for sake of time. Okay, child support for minors, you count 1/3 of that, is what I was going to say. Okay, the other kind of income Social Security is going to look at is unearned income. This is where Social Security asks, what is this person receiving SSI or trying to receive SSI receiving in the way of income, because we're going to deduct the maximum SSI payment dollar for dollar by the amount of money they get, other than $20. They give a first $20 free. So what we're talking about here is child support for an adult disabled child, military survivor benefits, IRA payments, all of that is income, and IRS tax returns are not. But Social Security will reduce the SSI by the amount of income. So let's use child support, for example. Someone who is getting child support payments for, if the person who's disabled is over the age of 18, that child support is considered income to the disabled adult child, even though the check is going to mom or dad. Okay, it is income for the disabled adult child. So Social Security won't count the first $20, but whatever is left, they're going to subtract the SSI payment by the child support amount. So in the example, $750 in child support, they're going to subtract $730 from the maximum SSI amount of $967. Now, what happens if the child support is $2,000? You're not going to be eligible for SSI unless you go back to court and get your child support assigned to a special needs trust. So there is a way around this, but it means going back to court. You can't just take your child support and move it into a trust or move it into an ABLE account. ABLE accounts won't work at all for child support. You have to go to court, get a court order ordering the creation of a special needs trust, and then you get the judge to order the assignment of the child support to the trust. And unfortunately, the only kind of trust you can use is a first party special needs trust. So this is the one with the Medicaid payback. That's just what the law is. You have to use a first party trust. Okay. And in Texas, it has to be done by court order. I said that. Let me see if there's anything else. You can't use an ABLE account. If you are in that situation and want to reach out to me, I'll make sure to give you some language that will work for Social Security purposes. A lot of family law attorneys are not real familiar with this. So if you want to check in with me, I can give you some information to give to your family law attorney if you're in that situation. Okay, same thing with military survivor benefits. If you are military and there's going to be military SBP upon the death of the military member, you can have those payments assigned to a special needs trust. Has to be a first party trust with a Medicaid payback. Otherwise, that payment is going to reduce SSI dollar for dollar. All right. Now, this is only SSI. We talked about SSDI. Remember, we don't care about income for SSDI. But SSI, this income can really cause problems, and also Medicaid. So Medicaid, you might be able to have a little more money depending on the Medicaid program. For example, a Medicaid waiver program typically will let you have 3 times the amount of the maximum SSI for that year, if that makes sense. So this year it is $967. I'm looking at my computer, my phone. 967 times 3. So this year you got about $2,901 that you could have coming in and still be eligible for most of the Medicaid waiver programs. Not all of them, but so in some cases you don't need a trust to keep the programs you want, but in a lot of cases you really want to get whether it's SBP or child support or whatever assigned to a trust. Okay. You can't assign every type of income to a special needs trust, but we're going to just keep going. But just know that just because there's income, it doesn't mean it automatically can go to a trust and not count. For example, you can't have your Social Security payments not count. The other kind of income is earned income. This is just, working your wages. Social Security does not count the first $65. They give a $20 freebie no matter what the income is. So really, Social Security won't count the first $85 if there's no other income other than the money earned at a job. And what that means is after that first $85, Social Security divides in half what's left and reduces the SSI payment by that, basically half of the earnings. Let me give you an example to make it have more sense. So if someone is earning $685, we'll have this be my daughter Angela. If Angela is earning $685 in a month, she has to report that every single month to Social Security. Tell them she's got $685 that she earned, and they're not going to count the first $20, and they're not going to count the next $65 because it's earned income. But if you subtract the 85, now she's got 600 left. They divide that in half, and her SSI check gets reduced by that $300. But she has a lot more money than she would, because now she gets $1,352 in a month. So it's a good thing, but she has to report the wages and her SSI gets reduced. It is really important that when you have any income job, you've got to report it by the 10th day of the month following the time that you get the income. So she gets paid on January 22nd. She has until February 10th to report it. And you need to report it every month. Any change you should always report, and it avoids problems with Social Security. There are ways that you can go back to work and not have the income count. There's great programs, and I'm watching the time, so I'm not going to be able to get into these, but students who are working, they can have their income not count up until they're 22. There are also impairment related work expenses. So if you want information on those programs, reach out to me and I'll send you some information, or just Google SSA Red Book, Student Earned Income Exclusion, and you can read about that. Okay, there's also, I have to say one more. People who start out on SSI and then they go to work, you can earn a ton of money and keep your Medicaid. Like, I think it's almost 50,000 or right around 50,000 this year that you can be earning and still have Medicaid if you were on SSI and you went back to work. So there's some great programs available. If you don't report changes, you might get something in the mail called a notice of overpayment. Social Security can find out years later that they paid you too much. Maybe you had that whole life insurance policy you didn't know, or there was a bank account that nobody told anyone about, and so they were paying you too much. Social Security makes you pay it all back. So you've got to always report and be very upfront about what's happening. Oh, there's a slide on student earned income exclusion. So you can look at these slides later. And I'm going to send these to Yvonne or whoever needs to send them out. I can't remember who is sending them out. Okay, we're going to keep going through this. The last type of income that Social Security looks at, and this is really confusing. I'm sorry, there's a lot of information, but it's called in-kind support and maintenance, or ISM. This is when somebody is on SSI, but they're getting free housing. Maybe they're living at home for free. Maybe a special needs trust is paying for them. But anyone who's living for free, they're not paying their own way, then that's considered income that they're getting. And it's called in-kind support maintenance. And if you have that, Social Security will reduce the SSI payment by 1/3. So in 2025, instead of getting $967 a month, if you have an ISM penalty, you're going to end up with $644 a month, or possibly $624. It's a little confusing, has to do with if you're getting all your food for free and who, if you're living in your own house or someone else's. Anyway, but it's $624 or $644. There are ways to get around that, so you don't have that ISM penalty. And one way you get around it is you have the person who's getting SSI pay their fair share of expenses. So what I can do is I can tell Social Security, yes, my daughter Angela's living for free at my house, or I'm sorry, not for free. She's living at the house with my husband and I. And then I look at the 9 items that Social Security cares about that are here on the screen. And I tell them, here's our mortgage payment. Here's our electricity payment. Here's our water payment, our sewer, our garbage collection. And what we do is we calculate all those bills. And then I have to do this with Social Security. I say, here's my bills. There's 3 people in the house. I added them all up. And this is my daughter's 1/3 share, because there's 3 of us in the house. And then what I do is I have her pay that 1/3 share every month. And it works. It works for my family, and it works for lots of people. So you need to know that if you are getting not the full amount, there are ways you can get rid of that ISM penalty. Now, what if my daughter's fair share is $1,000 and she's only getting, she's not getting that much in SSI? Then I have to do something else to show Social Security how she's paying her fair share. And I can do that through a lease agreement. And there's a bunch of new laws out there that you can have a lease agreement with just $350, and that's enough. It used to be you had to do fair share, fair market value. Now $350 is enough if my daughter's living at home. Or I can use an ABLE account. An ABLE account, and this is a little crazy, but an ABLE account, anyone can donate to an ABLE account. I can donate to an ABLE account for my daughter. Whoever puts money in the ABLE account, once it hits the ABLE account, it's considered to be my daughter's money. So she can use it to pay her fair share. ABLE accounts are used to pay for qualified disability expenses, and the IRS says this includes housing. So what I can do is take my money, donate it to the ABLE account, and Angela can explain what her fair share is and use her ABLE account to help pay her fair share, and she'll get the maximum SSI. Now, if that feels like what, email me and I'll send you some more information on ISM. But you just need to know that there is a penalty for someone receiving SSI not paying their share of expenses, and you can get rid of the penalty through either a lease agreement or an ABLE account. I'm more of a fan of the ABLE account. Lease agreements, to me, I'm not a tax specialist, but I believe it would be income to me. I also want to claim my daughter as a dependent. I'm worried about treating her like a tenant. So I kind of prefer ABLE accounts, but lots of people use lease agreements also. Okay. I'm gonna keep moving because I want to at least allow a couple of minutes for questions. Main takeaway I would say on this is always report the changes. Don't, if you have a child move out of the house, if you move, if you do go create a trust, if there's a settlement received, an inheritance, always report the changes. There are ways that you can fix it if Social Security says you've lost your benefits, but if you don't report it, they can come back years later and make you pay all the money back. So it's important to always report. If you do get that notice of overpayments, you have a few options. You can appeal the overpayment. You can ask for a waiver. There's different options on dealing with overpayments. And if you have questions on these particular issues, you are welcome to call me or email me. If you call my office, they will, if you want an appointment, it's a long wait, but if you just say, I just have a quick question for Allison. She was on a seminar. She said I could ask my question, then my paralegal will give me your number and I'll call you back. Okay. So this is my contact information, and I'm sorry, I haven't not left a lot of time for questions, but I'll quit talking now and take what questions are out there.
Well, we do have a few questions. First from Mr. Gout. Does a parent's age when initially drawing Social Security benefits factor in the CDB 50% or 70% amount?
Oh, I don't think I caught the actual question. So you were saying, oh, is it 50 or 75? It's 50% if the parent is still living. When the parent dies, it's 75%. So as long as I'm alive, I get my full retirement benefit. My daughter's getting 50% of what I'm getting, or 50% of what her dad gets. But when a parent dies, then it bumps up to 75% of the parent's full retirement benefit. And so
Can I clarify? The question is, like, if I take my normal retirement age, but if I delay it until 70, will
Got
that
it.
increase the amount that my disabled child will get as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. It does not. So the payment that they're going to get is going to be based on your full retirement age. So if you wait till 70, even though yours is going up, the calculation is going to be based on your full retirement age payment. Good question. I should have mentioned that. That's a good question.
Thank you.
Ms. Coleman asks, are death benefits counted against a child?
I'm not sure I understand what you mean by death. Oh, you mean survivor benefits from Social Security? If that's what you mean, any income is counted as income, if that's your question. So I'm not sure if I'm totally understanding that, if you want to clarify a little bit more.
Miss Coleman, would you like to
She said
expand on that?
yes, so I think you did answer it, but Ms. Coleman, if you'd like to check, if you want to unmute, you can ask that question.
If the question is related to survivor benefits or something like that, Any income is income for purposes of SSI and Medicaid. Again, if we're looking at Social Security, Disability, or Medicare, income isn't going to affect those programs. But HCS, CLASS, other Medicaid waiver programs, SSI, all of those are going to be looking at income and assets. And yes, any kind of income counts unless it can be assigned to a special needs trust, but survivor benefits could not be assigned to a special needs trust. But military survivor benefits could. So, you know, most of the income is going to count, but if it's military survivor benefits, that can go to a special needs trust. But regular Social Security survivors benefits cannot.
All right, Ms. Ruiz asks, for a child adopted through foster care that receives a monthly supplement, does that money count toward the child?
Yes. I've done some research on this and I don't remember if you're talking about an adult child. Well, I think the payment stopped. I don't know the answer for sure on that, but yes, I looked at that and I'm sorry, I just don't remember. I know we had someone, we looked into this and it was an issue. Even though the payment was going to the parent, I believe it qualified as income for the adult child. But let me tell you, I need to research that again. I don't remember that 100% clearly in my mind. So if you want to reach out to me after, I'll look it up and get back to you. And I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for everyone else on that.
Hey, Mr. Gout asks, when applying for SSDI for a child, should you wait until age 18 or apply earlier due to processing delays?
So if it's SSDI, this is a little bit of a complicated issue. There are some benefits to getting someone on SSI first if you have that choice versus SSDI. There's just some programs that happen. You get automatic Medicaid and some things like that if you start on SSI and you move to SSDI. But if that's just not an option, you can't say, I don't want the SSDI, I want the SSI. You always have to take all available sources of payments before you take SSI. So if it's just SSDI, if you apply for someone and if your child with disabilities is a minor, they're going to qualify as a minor. And then when they reach the age of 18, they're going to have to requalify as a disabled adult child. So I don't know if I'm really understanding or answering your question, but as far as delaying, I don't see an advantage to delaying applying for benefits. And maybe you can speak up if I'm not understanding the question.
I was just wondering, like, I have a child who's going to turn 18 in 2 months, so at what point should I, and I have to think about this because I guess until I retire, he can't get SSDI.
Right. Until a parent has retired, then Social Security is going to look at the child's own work record. And if they don't have enough credits, then they're not going to get it. But if they don't have enough credits, you could apply and get them on SSI first, and then
At
you
18.
retire, and then they'll move to SSDI. And I think that's the ideal way to do it, personally.
Okay, very helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Good
So the
question.
next question is about the fair share. Do you have to claim that on your taxes?
So I'm not a tax specialist, so whatever I tell you, I want you to confirm with your CPA. But I will tell you the way that it has been explained to me is if I am having my daughter pay her fair share, she's just paying a portion of the bill. So that's not income to me. She's just paying part of the mortgage or part of the electricity bill or water bill. So I'm not claiming that on my taxes. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I believe I'm on safe ground there. Where it's more questionable is if I sign a lease agreement and I treat her like landlord-tenant arrangement, and then I get paid under a lease, there's an argument that that is income to me. And so because I'm not real comfortable, not real clear on that, I'm just not doing that. Now, you can talk to your own CPA and they may tell you something different. But I think you're okay on fair share, from what I've been told.
Our next question is, if a child gets SSI at 18, does CBD take over when parent retires or dies?
Okay, if a child gets SSI at 18, can you repeat the last part?
Does the CBD take over when parent retires or dies?
Yes. Okay, so once you're in the Social Security system, whether it is SSI or SSDI, like a small amount under the person's own work record, once the parent dies, as long as they were disabled before the age of 22 and continuously disabled and not married, then the computer just should link them to the parent and say, okay, now you're drawing off of this parent. You know, say if my daughter comes under my work record and then her dad retires later, the computer will just move her to her dad's work record because it's greater. It'll be a bigger payment under his. So it should happen by computer. If it doesn't, just go into the Social Security system and make sure that everybody's linked up together.
And Allison, I believe some individuals can qualify for both programs, dual eligible.
Yes, that's a really good point. So say the SSDI payment, and this happens all the time when you have someone who maybe worked for a while in their 20s. You know, say Angela had a work record and she could get maybe $300 on her own work record. Because that doesn't disqualify, you know, that's not enough money to get rid of the SSI. SSI just gets reduced by $300 because it's an unearned income. It's some other income coming in. So her SSI check is reduced. So she ends up with SSI and SSDI, Medicaid and Medicare. And then let me add this because this is really important for people who are on SSI and they're getting Medicaid, and then all of a sudden mom or dad retires and now they switch to SSDI. There's going to be a letter in the mail that says, hey, guess what? You lost your Medicaid. The Medicaid you lose is the Medicaid linked to SSI. But if you lost it because you moved to SSDI, you're going to be eligible for a new Medicaid program. You just have to fill out new paperwork. So there's lots of different kinds of Medicaid programs. So just because you lose SSI linked Medicaid doesn't mean you won't get back on disabled adult child Medicaid. So in that, a lot of people end up, this is very common. They have SSI and Medicaid until parents retire, and then they have SSDI, Medicare, SSDI meaning the childhood disability benefits, Medicare and Medicaid, and that's very common. And the Medicaid pays the Medicare premiums. It's a great setup.
All right, the next question, if a minor kid gets approved, is it possible due to his parents' income later on get disqualified from that income?
Yes, so if you are approved for SSI, whether you're a minor or adult, you always have to report the income. So if we're talking about a minor child, the parent's income, it matters every single month. So it's not like you get approved, then you're good to go. So if there's a new job, you know, that's why you always report the changes. So say a minor qualifies and then a parent gets a boost in their income, they have to report that and they might lose SSI because now the parent's income is higher. So yeah, it's a month-to-month qualification.
I believe this goes back to Ms. Coleman's previous question about survivor benefits. Can those benefits go into an enable account?
So you can, this is where it's a little confusing. You can move money into an ABLE account, but it doesn't, which would stop it from being counted as an asset, a resource, but you can't have it go to an ABLE account to prevent it from counting as income. So remember, you got to look at it like, what is the income? Are you eligible? You have too much income? And what are your total assets? So the income you can't change by just moving it to an ABLE account. It's still income. But say my daughter's getting her SSI and it's just building up, and if she gets over $2,000 in that representative payee account, she loses SSI. So I can take her money and move it to an ABLE account. You know, so the income always counted, but if it's building up so her assets are too high, that I can move to an ABLE account and it doesn't hurt her. In the ABLE account, you can have up to 100,000 and stay on SSI. Okay, but you can only put 19,000 a year. Whereas a representative payee account, you can only have up to 2,000. Did that answer or did that confuse you more? So the answer is you cannot just move survivor benefits to an ABLE account and not count it as income. That doesn't work.
Okay, when I apply for Social Security income for my son, they check my income to see if he qualifies. I guess that's the question, correct?
I'm not sure I understand that. Could you say it one more time?
Okay, it says, when I applied for Social Security income for my son, they check my income to see if he qualifies.
Okay, so if it is for a minor, then yes, they're checking parents' income. But if it is for an adult disabled child, so someone who's over the age of 18, mom and dad's income doesn't matter, even if they're living in the house. Okay, so it's different for a minor versus an adult.
Okay, and my child doesn't qualify for SSI as a minor due to my income, but should qualify as an adult. Do I need to wait until he turns 18 to apply, or can I start the process now? Turns 18 in about 6 months.
Yeah, don't start it now. This is different from guardianship. So I know guardianship's not what we're talking about, but guardianship, you can start it ahead of time and have your court hearing at age 18, but you could start it 6 months in advance. Doesn't work the same for Social Security. Some people say you can, maybe start it a tiny bit early, but the safest thing, just wait till they're 18. Just do it the month they turn 18 or the month after they turn 18 if you want to be extra safe. And that way, because you don't want the application to just get kicked back. Now, that's my general advice. Because the processing is taking so long, there may be a way where it's so delayed that by the time they saw your application, it might be okay. But I'm going to stick with my safest advice, which is just wait till 18, because otherwise you're just going to get the application kicked back for a minor whose parents have too much income and assets. I would wait.
So Allison, that's the end of the questions, but there were several comments in there saying how helpful and amazing this presentation was, so thank you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And I'm sorry I kept everyone here a little later. And if you have other questions, feel free to reach out to me at a different time and I'll stop now. Thank you for the invitation.
You did great. This is wonderful. And it was packed. So thank you for streamlining all that information. I know it's a lot. But Allison, if you would send me the presentation, I'll get it to Jeanette. So Jeanette will send it out to everybody who has their email listed on the registration.
Perfect.